because, you know, the Tory party had moved right to try and, you know, get a lot of those UKIP voters, which they did, because UKIP went from, you know, having basically there's like zero UKIP council seats across the country after that 2015 election and the 2017 election. And so the Tory party, wanting to placate their more harder right-wing MPs and voters, wanted to have a referendum quickly, regardless or not of how well it was done, because I don't think that it's an issue of putting party over country. There was no real pre-thought into how Brexit would affect the public, really.
Yeah. It
was just shit, we'll have a vote. Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah, swear away.
Fucking joke, mate. So, like, do you know what I mean? They're thinking, for fuck's sake, we have to do this because we promised it to our voters. Obviously, the establishment Tory party was for the side of Remain. They didn't want us to leave, really, but they wanted to be able to say, we've had the conversation, now let's continue as is.
Okay.
So, do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of machinations internally within the Tory party, and then on a different level within the whole country.
I get what you're saying from that front, because it seems to me like it's like they didn't think that we were going to vote for the UK to leave as it would, because they had no
it's a bad thing to do.
Yeah, they had no plan for that side. They just had the plan for, okay, we're going to remain. Let's just remain. And then once the population were like, or the nation were like, well, let's leave.
Well, you know, essentially, I mean, like, I agree, but it's not even the nation. It's not the populace. It's the population that voted.
Yeah.
If you once again look at Brexit, is a thing that not only affects everybody who voted, everybody who didn't vote.
Yeah.
It affects all of the British people living outside of Britain.
Yeah.
It affects, in an interesting way, lots of people who view themselves to be British outside of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Let's say they're living in Jersey, or they're living in the the British-owned territories in the Caribbean, or let's say they're, you know, even the British expat community in Hong Kong and places like this. It's done a lot to change. It's done a lot to bring the conversations of British identity forward from the Second World War, basically, up to now. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but it feels like they're just going back in time by doing that, because then we're on our own, and then we have to fight and find everything ourselves, and we have to build all these relationships again, and no one wants to trade with us.
Yeah, but rule Britannia rules the waves. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You got to understand, in the idea of in the psyche of, not in the specific psyche of, but in a large part of the psyche that was a large part of the British psyche that was activated as part of the Leave campaigns. The ideas of taking back control, whatever that means, is the same as Make America Great Again. But, you know, and then you have the other side, which is, you know, we are people with nothing to lose, therefore we're going to have a protest vote, we're going to have a kick out at the establishment. The combining of those two things is such a poisonous combination, because it's reactionary, it's emotion first, not fact first. And obviously when, you know, you have a binary referendum, in or out, it means that these things aren't predisposed to nuanced debate. They're predisposed to, well, are you this or are you that? And that's definitely not how you can look at, you know, Britain. Like, it doesn't make sense.
It's true.
And that's why I would argue, even if we did have the referendum as was, if we would have had a period of reflection after that referendum, before triggering Article 50, it would have meant that, you know, there would have been, even if it wasn't a, you know, healthy debate, because, you know, fuck me, Joe Cox, a sitting MP, was shot just before the referendum. Even if it wasn't a peaceful debate, it would have been a learned and nuanced debate into what the pros and cons of Britain being in Europe are, or out of Europe are, what, you know, the pros and cons of being part of, like, you know, the world's largest trading bloc versus striking out into, like, you know, our own, blah, blah, blah. All this kind of stuff could be, the referendum could have been a catalyst to those conversations, as opposed to the first time and the last time it looks like we'd have that conversation before making a big old decision.
So was it the fact that we called Article 51 that the EU said that we can no longer come back into the EU even if we had a second vote about it? Was that the reason why they've said that, or was it the fact that we were just having the thoughts of leaving the EU?
No. So I think once Article 50 was triggered, the EU then basically once Article 50 is triggered, what was triggered? The UK started the diplomatic process of removing themselves from the EU, as in the EU Parliament and all of the supranational organisations and stuff. And so I think that is, but obviously, like, I like politics. I'm a bit of a political nut, but I don't know the specifics of that question.
I just know that the EU, I can't remember when it was, but they from the moment we decided that we were leaving the EU, they said that even if you vote to leave, you cannot come back into the EU.
Well, I mean, you got to understand, the EU is 27 other countries,
exactly.
and they each got their own, they each have their own, internal issues to deal with. Like Brexit is not the biggest thing on many EU countries'
No,
plate.
it's not. But it's just it could possibly be the pin rolling or the catalyst to other countries thinking,
the first domino.
That's the domino. That's the word I was actually looking for. But every other country just saying like, hey, well, if Britain can leave the EU, why don't we leave the EU?
Yeah, but there's a case. Yeah, it's true. But there's a case to argue that Britain wasn't even in the EU in the same way as many other countries.
It's true.
Weren't part of Schengen, weren't part of the Euro. Specifically, Britain made a point of when it was, joining the EEA as it was in the 1970s. That we were going to retain all of our national sovereignty and all this kind of stuff, which once again speaks to how Britain imagined itself in the world after the Second World War and after the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, because after you have what's being referred to now as the Windrush generation and the rebuilding of the country after the Second World War, the last time that Britain could pat itself on the back and be like, no, we defeated the fascists, it meant that in the ensuing years, Britain on a global scale, I think, or at least I believe, didn't have to reckon with its colonial legacy. It could, in the same way that Britain often does, it exports the pain, it brushes it under the carpet, you can go stiff upper lip. The wealth of this country can all be here. Meanwhile, it doesn't exist without Jamaican plantations, and doesn't exist without Indian knowledge and resources. So I think it's a weird thing that we're only having these conversations now in 2018 and 2019, and whenever the referendum was, 2017, 16, whatever.
Yeah.
We're only having these conversations about Britain's colonial legacy, its empirical legacy. We're only having those conversations way after the fact, because that's how long it takes for things to really take effect.
It's crazy.
Yeah, man, it is pretty mad.
And I think actually, Boohoo found this just hilarious, just in general. So I read this article from the Metro about Boohoo, the clothing site. So they have this fake fur item of clothing on their website, which actually all the information, no fur contains blah blah blah, turns out actually contained real fur.
Right.
So they were advertised. They've been slammed for misleading people, saying it wasn't real fur and it was real. It was fake fur and it was real fur. And I just thought it was funny. It's just kind of like what was it last year? Was it last year or the year before with H&M? The H&M scandal, was it last year?
Yeah.
It's just like, how do these big conglomerates get things like this to the final public line?
How many people had to sign up on
Yeah,
this? Yeah, I mean, the issues there about the ethics of fur clothing and fur in the fashion industry, I think it speaks to fast fashion, which is totally different from from like, you know, how fur used to be used
Yeah.
as part of clothing and stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's weird when fashion becomes not only just industrialized, but like it becomes hyper transient and fleeting. You buy, you know, a pair of £30 jeans, they break within 3 months, you buy another pair of £30 jeans. That attitude of buying and buying and buying to get more and more and more, quicker and quicker and quicker.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that really fucks up a lot of, but because it's just the economy of scale. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not for real fur in clothing. I disagree with it, but obviously I'm definitely not going to tell, you know, indigenous Inuit communities that they can't, like, you know, trap bears and wear pelts and things like that, because it's clearly different, comes with a different power dynamic. Meanwhile, when it's an industrialized, no, sorry, not an industrialized, but when it is an industry, the industry of trapping, the capitalist industry of trapping and stuff, I super disagree with it, because, you know, it speaks to creating false scarcity, jacking up prices, and over farming the resources. It's the same thing, like, you know, overfishing and issues like that. Plus, Canada Goose, who are a famous clothing brand, they famously have been hounded. Hounded by PETA, who also have their own issues, but they've been hounded by PETA for their use of real fur consistently. And Canada Goose at the start of 2018 had a massive advertising campaign. I work in a cinema. Canada Goose were trailing their things before films. This was going on across the world. And I noticed, just because in the way that you work in cinema and you see these things, and I live in London and you're on the tube, you read the metro, etc., I just saw the mad increase of people wearing Canada Goose.
Oh yeah, I've seen it as well.
Yeah, man, and it just wasn't always a thing in the UK before, like this year, to the same extent.
No,
and I'm like, that is worrying for me, because I know that the amount of things that are being sold here, think about how many foxes and badgers and whatever the fuck comes from, had to be unnecessarily killed. Also, fur is one of the most wasteful industries around agriculture. So, do you know what I mean? Like, they just get a fox, kill it, discard all of the internals, and then just use the skin to put on a jacket.
Yeah.
Very wasteful. Whereas, like, you know, what I was saying about indigenous Inuit cultures or many other indigenous cultures, they won't just kill the animal and then just use the skin. They'll kill it and they'll cook it and da-da-da-da. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They'll put the animal to better use. In an age of, well, yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Like Forrest Gump.
You much of a gamer?
I've always been I've always been in the periphery of big gamers.
Okay.
I've never been a massive gamer myself.
Okay.
I was like a FIFA, CODs,
Fair.
like, you know, social gamer. But yeah.
GTA?
Yeah, man. I played GTA San Andreas for a long time. My brother had it, and then I loved, like, my interaction with GTA recently has just been listening to the radio show playlists, because they're sick.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The new GTA's that's set to come out, GTA 6,
Uh-huh.
it's meant to be the most realistic game that they have ever brought out to date.
I'm not sure if I want realism from my GTA game.
But they've been working on it for a very long time, but they're looking to improve from the last game, all the facial animation, all the cars, all the motorcycles, the boots, so it's like that. It feels like we're going towards that virtual reality type. What's the film that came out last? Ready Player One. I don't know if you.
I work in a cinema, so I saw most of it. Yeah.
I read the book around the time when the film came out, only because it seemed like one of those books that you really need, one of those things that you really need to read as opposed to watching. Mm-hmm. The book, it's I recommend it to anyone to read, because the description in it, I've never seen the film, but I watched the trailer, and from from everything I read in the book, when I watched the trailer, I was like, that's what I saw in my head. When I read this book, this is the world that literally they created it all from words. It's absolutely magical. But yeah, it just feels like we're going towards that whole direction with virtual reality and things becoming more realistic, next gen consoles. I mean, I haven't played a console in a very long time. Only game I'm playing right now is Fortnite because it's uber popular. But other than that,